guys, I am Markus Schulz. Today we're going to be looking at one of the tracks on my new artist album, Scream 2. It's called Remember This. It's a kind of a very special song for me because one of the things that I wanted to do with this song was bring back the spirit of that old trance vibe. Obviously trance has evolved into a whole new, different ball game, and with this track, like I said, it's about the spirit with the old trance spirit with modern production, techniques. So what I started with was this lead stack right here. Hold on, let me mute the other ones. This was the original sound. All by itself, and then I added all the different layers. Well, the main lead is it's a silent. It's a big saw sound with the cutoff down, but as you lift the cutoff up, it not only affects the sound, the cutoff, but also the release. And then I just have an EQ, a simple EQ, rolling off everything at 200, boosting a little bit at 10,000, and an expander. And then I have the entire chain, all four sounds that make up this stack, have them running into a bus. On the bus, another EQ that's pinching a little bit at 270. Killing some of the bad frequencies at 270, rolling everything off at 182, and on top of that we have a beautiful BBE sonic maximizer to just really kind of maximize sonically the sound. So that's the lead. But once I had the lead going, then once I got the lead going, the most important thing for me at that point is, okay, I'm going to have this track with this amazing lead, but now I've really got to make it so that it works. For me, I need to be able to play it in my sets. So that's when I go to building the kick, the bass line, and the build-ups and everything to get to it. So start off with our kick here. The main kick is it's a combination of different samples, and one of the tricks that I like to use is there's a plugin called Bassism, and what I use the Bassism for is I layer the sine with it to give the kick the air that it needs, because I find that a lot of times with kicks, I play in big stadiums, I play in big clubs, those sound systems are tuned to be able to give you just amazing gut-punching bottom end. So I find that a lot of times the samples don't have the air that I'm looking for, or through the processing you lose some of the air. So I like to use a plugin called Bassism. You can tune in the note on it, and like I said, layer the air, the part that pushes the subs. That all comes from Bassism. The kick is a sample that I made using 3 different random samples, and then I bounced it down to one kick, and then I reprocessed it. I started off with an EQ, pinching down at 210 and at 320 to get rid of some of the unwanted rattle, and rolled it off at 45. Then we use this beautiful Waves channel EQ, channel strip, the NLS channel strip. And this one basically just a little bit of drive, a little bit of noise, high cut and low cut, which is actually for performance. There's a spot in the track where I take the kick and high cut the kick, and another part where I low cut the kick, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But for me, it's a moment type thing. And then I have this trick that I use. I put an auto filter on the kick. Now, and I put this auto filter on a lot of tracks. So what I do is cut off all the way up, and then I just put a little 4% on the output. And what it does is it gives a little bit of distortion, a little bit of fatness. And the cool thing is the headroom, it actually takes up less headroom with your kick, but you can the volume is actually louder. So it's a little trick that I use with the auto filter for. I not only use that on the kick, but any big sound that I want to cut through, that I need people in the back of the stadium to hear, I put that on it, and like I said, it shrinks the headroom, which means you can raise the volume even more. The bass line I made using 3 sounds. This is the main bass sound. Then I added this little skanky bass just to get a little, mid skank in there. And then again, I layered a sine with it, and the sine gives it the air. I think that's an important thing, that your basses push some air. And a good trick for that is just to use a sine and just layer it underneath. And you've got to know your speakers. When you feel the speakers pushing the air, then you know that the sine is doing its trick. And one of the important things with any sound like a sine or even white noise is I use the rule of thumb. I don't want to hear it, but if you mute it, you notice that it's missing. So I think it's a good rule of thumb to go by when you're layering a sine wave with your bass to give it that extra air. The main bass line is just a silenth, 4 parts to it on this silenth, and I ran it through obviously a LFO tool, to get a little side chain on it. The direct mixer, so that I can bring the bass line in a little bit. I think it's important with trance, especially when you want your wide pads. You got to keep the bass, keep it in range a little bit. And then I just got a couple of channel EQs here, boosting a little bit at 91, rolling off some of the top end, some of the clickiness. And then this one here is for when I'm filtering in the track. I use a low cut and a high cut as well. So in the track I have some automation that's going on with the bass. Then it's running into a bus. The bus is just a simple C6 from Waves, and another channel EQ just to make sure that the clicky bass doesn't have any low ends, because we're going to be using a lot of the low end from the sine. So when they're all together, we've got a nice fat groove, pushes a lot of air both from the bass and from the kick. But to really kind of drive our point home that this track is like it's gonna rock, is we've got these little techie synths that I bring in, and I think this is kind of, for me, it's the attention grabber for the crowd. It's these little I call them tech jumpers. It just gets the crowd like, whoa, here it's something's going on. Big sound that when I'm playing this track, I know that the people in the back of the arena are their attention. It grabs their attention. These two are made as well by Silent, and lots of processing on these to get them right. But when you put them together, well, this is the first one. It's kind of a rubbery little sound, and it helps the main sound have a little bit more mid. I find that a lot of times these techie sounds, they're just too smiley face for me. It's like it might have too much of the very top and too much of the very bottom. So roll off some of the bottom, try and tame some of the highs, but we got to find a sound that complements it, that gives it the mid-range, because like I said, the important thing is you want the people in the back of the arena, you want to grab their attention. So for me, this little tech jumper right here does the trick. Of course, I used an auto filter on it as well, because I wanted to, like I said, be heard by everybody all the way down the street. This is the kind of sound that if a car is driving by and they're playing this track, that's the sound that you're going to be hearing from across the street. The delay is just a simple stereo delay, nothing too fancy. I got the feedback a little bit lower on one side and a little higher on the other side, just to give it a little bit more, give it a little bit more bounce around the room. But 30% on the output mix, and 35% left feedback, 53% right feedback. Like I said, I just like the sound to sound like it's carrying a little bit, as opposed to just delaying straight in the center. Now, one of the important things, especially in trance music, is the pitch bend. We've got to get into the breakdown, which is the beauty moment, that euphoric moment. But we kind of have to lift the room. We kind of have to get the whole room. When I produce, I think in theater terms. I don't just think of music as just music. It's like I try and imagine an audience. I try and imagine the lights, the pyro, the VJs. I try and imagine all of this stuff. So before we get to the magical breakdown, what we have to do is we've got to create a little bit of chaos in the room. For the strobes, the confetti, all that stuff. We got to give them something to do all these effects to. So the right before the breakdown, we go into a massive pitch bend. I bring in another square sound, more of a 16th note side chained, two of them stacked together, and pitch bend them. At the same time, I took my tech jumper, both of them, and I pitch bended them as well. So what we get is very simple, but it really, really works, grabs their attention. The 16th note square is also silent. I mean, I used a lot of silent on this, but it's just a little, simple little square with a just a pitch bend range of 12. Got some processing on it, but it has a reverb on it. This is one of the special reverbs that I love. I absolutely love this Arts acoustic reverb. For me, it's one of those reverbs where it makes everything sound cloudy, and I think that leading into a beautiful breakdown like what we're going to be going into, we need to start introducing some white noise, some I guess stuff that, I don't know. For me, it's just I just describe it as fog and cloud, because that's what we want. Because once we get to the end of this big lifter, we want the fog and the haze to disappear, and then in comes this beautiful lead. It's almost like the sun lifting and burning off the fog. In if you want to look at it as in pictures like that. But like I said, I'm very theatrical with my music, so I like to I like to have a visual picture of the way this works. So for me, on this particular sound, I used an Arts acoustic because it has that beautiful cloudy top end that I put on the pitchers, the 16th note pitch benders, and like I said, clears up and the main lead comes in. Even though the pitch bend is lifting up and grabbing everybody's attention, the bass and the groove stays the same. At this point, we get into our breakdown. I didn't want to just bring in the lead right away. Like I said, I want to be theatrical. So I have a moment, an 8-bar moment, where we just have a drone note, a static note. And what that does is the dance floor stands there. After a big build-up like that, you want to almost leave a gap in there for the audience to kind of like release, scream, just kind of, you just had just an intense moment. So having that 8 bars, and what I did is I have a little a saw that just kind of lifts up. And here's what happens. All of the white noise, all of the transitional sounds, uplifters, downlifters, they're all starting to fade out, and then another the sounds that are going to lead us into the main lead now start to lift up. Like I said, it's in a theatrical way, it's a perfect opportunity for the lighting guys, the VJs, the pyrotech guys to get ready, do a blackout or some kind of amazing scene before we introduce this moment that we hope is going to change people's lives. And that is the main melody. That's all for now. If you want to see more, make sure you check out the latest edition of Computer Music and check out the details below.
Download over 30 exclusive plugins. Get hundreds of pro-quality samples and power up your production skills with in-depth tutorials. We break it down for you step by step, and you'll see exactly how it's done in expert video guides and producer masterclass sessions with pro producers. Get all this and more with Computer Music Magazine every month on iPad and iPhone, PC and Mac, Android, and in print.